So I'm very much aware that making a video about a game in the fighting game genre isn't exactly the greatest thing to do for views, and I fully expect that since I'm fairly certain there are island tribes with more members than the fighting game community, but to hell with it, I want to talk about Strive. So here's a question: is there a genre of video game that's more confusing or intimidating than a fighting game? Like, yeah, something like Souls can be hard and intimidating, but let's be fair, at least the game is comprised of just like 4 buttons. You got 2 attack buttons, the button that you mash the instant you even think you're about to get hit, and the button that gets you guard broken and stabbed in the chest. That's it. Yeah, I know there's things like parries and consumables, but these 4 actions make up the core of the game, and would be nigh on impossible to play without. So it's pretty easy to understand why you fail in something like Souls. Something along the lines of Big Knight swung stick and you were in the way, you actual failure. But in a fighting game, oh well, it's simple. You fell for a frame trap, got tick throwed, overhead fuzzy, and took a 5-way mix-up from this bitch and her stupid hair. What does any of that mean? Exactly. Welcome to Guilty Gear Strive, cunt. Guilty Gear is a series initially made by one man in his basement, with the goal of figuring out how many belts he could fit on his characters. His name is Daisuke Ishiwatari, and he is the lead designer, artist, writer, composer, and sometimes even voice actor for the series. And I hear that, on the weekends, he volunteers at homeless shelters and saves cats from trees. Eventually, the series garnered so much popularity that it went from this in the 1990s to what we see today. You know, just the most visually fucking stunning fighting game I think I've ever seen. And it's quite handy to have such a kick-ass graphical direction attracting attention to it, because getting new players into this genre is a nightmare. I genuinely think it would be easier to ease someone into the idea of eating a sandwich made of ants and bone fragments than it'd be to teach a newbie how to deal with this nonsense. Now I know this will get me some flack from the fighting game community, but every now and then I'll hear someone say, oh, fighting games aren't hard, anyone can be great at them. And look, I'm just gonna go ahead and say that's kind of a little bit of horse shit. If you wanted to learn how to play a fighting game and actually take W's, then it's kind of like trying to learn a fucking instrument. It's a long, hard, and technically never-ending process. And much like an instrument, there are 2 key hurdles here: time and execution. You know those people who don't play MMOs because they're simply too much of a time investment? Yeah, take that problem and then add a gigantic execution barrier on top of it. I've been playing this genre for over 10 years, and even I can't consistently do TK Axle Bombers. Please fucking kill me! And sure, MMOs might burn more time than the US burns another country's oil, but at least their execution difficulty only boils down to learning a fucking rotation to press a few buttons. I think. I don't really play MMOs. But that's not all. Let's talk about the time that you need to put in just to understand the fundamentals of how to play, because this shit isn't exactly Mario on a Goomba levels here. Unlike something like, say, an FPS, where the overarching goal is something so simple that anyone can grasp it, usually some variation of click on the head lol, there is a tiny bit more that you need to do in a fighting game. For Christ's shit, there is a literal dictionary for this genre, and if you didn't know this, then that should get my point across. What, you didn't know what a meaty or a fuzzy is? Read up, dumbass! And when you do something wrong that costs you a match, it's not as easy to understand as, oh, the sniper headshot me before I got behind cover, or this demon ate my testicles because I didn't roll away in time. Because in fighting games, typically you don't lose due to any one failure. It's a string of small failures over a long period of time that you may not be able to perceive, let alone know what you were supposed to do to avoid them. In the FPS example, kill the sniper first or get behind cover faster. In a Souls-like, roll at the right time. Even if you've never played these games, it's kind of easy to understand why someone did or did not fail. But if you've never played a fighting game, how are you supposed to know that this can be blocked but this can't? That this state is invincible, or that this can be blocked but it's a really bad idea to do so? I'd argue that, second to MMOs, this is the genre that you need to pump the most time into. It's a genre inherently designed around you and someone else, and it's all down to how well you, and only you, grasp how the game works, if you want to actually enjoy the main appeal of these games. That being, making little Timmy throw his controller across the room from the the other side of the country. Mind you, that's just a joke. I'm not saying that you can't have fun with a fighting game only if you win, but whether you have fun losing constantly is all down to your personality. So the truth is, not everyone is going to be able to get into fighting games, mainly because not everyone has the time to dedicate a fucking education curriculum to a genre of video game. With that said though, while I do believe it's difficult and time consuming to get into this shit, Strive sure does a damn good job trying to help. Between shortened combo durations, a pace that's easier for newbies to react to, and gameplay so simple that even I can understand what a character wants to do, it's quite frankly no wonder that this game is the best-selling title in the series by far. With Strive, it's actually not that hard to understand what's happening on screen once the basic fundamentals have been explained. Hell, I have a few friends who don't touch fighting games, yet I've had them tell me about matches they've watched because with Strive, it's relatively easy to spectate it, whilst understanding why players are doing what they're doing. So, fuck me, I guess. I've decided I'm gonna try to pull your attention into this wonderful game, even if you don't plan on playing it. And if you do plan on trying your hand at it, then hey, hopefully you'll get some fundamental knowledge so that you don't fall for this nonsense and forever drown in sullen misery. Disclaimer, I am not a professional player like Fab, Daru, or Hitachi. In fact, I'm scared that I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to make video content. Please add extra loop to any comment you may write. Please God, I'm trying. I can't even get into Celestial! So let's start. I'm sure you can activate enough neurons in your head to understand that this is a health bar, and that this is a bar that lets you do the flashy shit. I'll come back to that in a moment, but for now, here's the best way that I can describe how you're supposed to play. At any given time, there are 3 game states that you'll be constantly jumping between in matches. The neutral, offense, and defense. Every match begins in the neutral state. It's the state in which neither player has any tangible advantage over the other, and sometimes this state lasts a few seconds, and other times, it's a few milliseconds. Neutral also occurs when a player is forced to drop their offense for any reason, or if a knockdown leads to the spacing away of both characters. The goal of neutral is to be the first to land that one hit that puts them into some kind of animation that they can't easily cancel out of, so that you can run closer and start your offense. Typically, players win neutral by either throwing out long-reaching moves that are also fast to recover if they miss, or by utilizing their character's mobility to avoid their opponent's attacks and wiggle their way in. Fuck you, champ! Regardless of the method, the goal is simple. Put the opponent into an animation state where they can't throw attacks at you. And there's a number of ways that you can force them into that state. You can make them block, knock them down, swat them out of the air, and a number of other things that I could list here, but that would break the rule of 3, eat my grapes. If you force them to block, they can't cancel out of this animation without spending some sort of resource until the animation naturally ends. But you can leak multiple attacks into each other to force them to keep blocking for a small period, which is called a block string. You see that term that just popped up? Remember these whenever they're shown, because they'll be important for the long character section, smile. Some characters also have moves that are plus on block, which just means that if you, the defender, blocks the move, the opponent gets out of their attack animation before you can leave your block animation, and so they're able to attack again. And this usually lets them reset their block string for free. Plus on block moves are rare in a character's arsenal, and they are typically risky, thanks to either a long startup time or short range. But most characters have at least one plus on block move. Getting what's called a hard knockdown is the golden goose in neutral. For this entire animation, the opponent cannot do anything. And while they're down, you can prepare an attack as soon as they get back on their feet, which can force your opponent to block the instant they get up. And often, these moves can be disjointed from your character. And while they're blocking your move as they get up, you can try to burst through their guard. This action of setting up an attack to further pressure your opponent as they're getting up from a knockdown is called okizeme, or oki. If you swat them out of the air, they have to fall all the way back down to the ground, which gives you quite a lot of time to react and run forward to start your offense. And in some cases, you can just raw combo off of this hit if the stars align. Once neutral is won through either poking with long range, exploiting mobility, or if you have neither, just being really patient, you transition over into your offense state, while the opponent shifts to their defense state. And you'll most likely need to break through their defense if you want to start devouring their health bar. And this is achieved in a number of ways as well, such as going for a high-low mix-up. Certain attacks can only be blocked while crouching, while others can only be blocked while standing. So, if you can smack them with an attack they don't block properly, then hey, you did it claps all around for you. There's also a variation of this called a left-right mix-up, which can force the opponent to block in the completely wrong direction, since in most 2D fighters, you block by holding your movement in the opposite direction of the opponent. So if you suddenly switch sides and they don't react in time, they'll block in the wrong direction and get hit. Or you could use a grab, which is an attack that cannot be blocked at all, and instead must be countered with either a fast attack or jumped out of. Grabs are often mixed into block strings and Okazeme setups to force an opponent into another type of mix. Jumping is one of the safest ways to avoid a grab, because even though there's a few frames of startup before you leave the ground, all of those frames are invincible to grabs. However, during these exact same frames, the jumper cannot block any regular attacks. So if a player forces the opponent to guess between needing to stay planted on the ground in order to block a strike, or needing to jump to avoid a throw, that player is enforcing a mix called a strike-throw mix. Then there's frame traps, which are usually put into block strings. You remember those, right? These things? Well, most well-constructed block strings have 0 gaps in them. For example, there is not a single frame in this sequence in which the opponent can do anything besides block. Well, what if we purposefully left a gap in our string by delaying one of our attacks? A gap big enough that the opponent can get into the startup of an attack, but small enough that the actual hurt box can't come out before our next attack does. That is a frame trap, and if they fall for it and try to attack you, you get a juicy. Some attacks that trigger counters, usually the larger, slower attacks, will make the game enter slow-mo, giving you not just extra time to react, but also allowing you to connect hits that otherwise wouldn't, completely skipping having to break through the opponent's guard and just going straight into swag combos. Lastly, I am very briefly going to cover 3 of the 4 Roman cancels here, but for the sake of the video's length, this is going to be very compressed. Roman cancels can be performed with 50 meter and basically allow you to cancel any move's animation, both the startup and the endings. They also let you cancel moves into other moves that normally wouldn't work, like a special into a normal, and thus let you reset pressure, extend combos, or perform mix-ups that otherwise wouldn't work. TLDR, Romans are your aces in the hole when all else fails and you're willing to spend meter moving on. There are a number of other methods that you can use to crack through defenses as well, but those are the main ones to know about. And most of the ones that I didn't talk about are just advanced variants of the stuff I already covered, like fuzzies or tick throws, which are way too advanced for this video. On the defense side, it's obviously not exactly fun to have this happen to you, so there's a number of different mechanics, both universal and character specific, that you have in order to prevent that from happening. While rare, your character may have a reversal. These are extremely powerful because most of them are invincible on the very first frame of their activation, meaning they can beat things like frame traps and sloppy Okazeme setups. Luckily though, there's only 4 characters that currently possess a reversal that doesn't cost any resources, and all resources are punishable if they miss or get blocked. Unless you're fucking Soul, who will just do another one immediately after. Some characters have hyper armor, guard point, or parry properties on certain attacks, letting them blast through opponents without having to worry about flinching, and in the latter's case, turning their own button against them. Typically, these are for characters who believe in having a defense that dick punches the opponent, namely Potemkin, Anji, and Leo Weifeng. So, with everything I just told you, you might be able to understand how characters are designed outside of how many belts he or she wears. Strive's cast is composed of what would happen if you took a whole bunch of character traits, both aesthetic-wise and gameplay-wise, threw them into a paper shredder and then tried to put them back together. Most people are probably going to pick a character based on their own personal flavor of aesthetic ridiculousness, but it's not just visuals that decide a character. At least I hope. So, you know those game states I was just talking about and all these little terms that kept popping up? Yeah, so each character is designed to specialize in various parts of these game states and their techniques. So, for an example, you know how one of the ways you can open up your opponent is with high-low mix-ups? Some characters are made to excel in that method, such as a character like Ino. Remember the talk of Oki? Characters like Milia specialize in having extremely scary Oki, and often, characters are hybrids that specialize in more than just one thing. Going back to Ino, while her main draw is her oppressive high-low mix game, she also has formidable Oki, which she combines with her main focus to break you like a graham cracker. So if you checked these 2 boxes as your favorite parts of a match, Ino would probably be your main. When you understand all of these little roles, it becomes relatively easy to figure out which character to pick up, because you just look for the ones that specialize in the parts of the match that you like the most. And while I could go through every character in the game and why you'd want to play them, that's exactly what I'm going to do. But just as a reminder, again, I am not a professional, so if I get any of these character focuses wrong, please choose the correct lube and not the hot sauce, please. So here we go. Soul Bad Guy. Offensive powerhouse, widely considered to be the best in the game, and for good fucking reason. Specializes in getting up close and using annoying ass frame traps to fish for counter hits, and is also infamous for things like his plus unblock buttons like Far Slash and Fafnir, which further exacerbates his ability to instill fear and stop people from pressing buttons on block. Once his opponent is scared, he can run over them with things like his command grab and just his regular grab. Has a good neutral game, a higher than average mix-up game thanks to a command grab, a meterless reversal, and is easy to pick up and play. Play Soul if any of that sounds appealing, or if you like the idea of playing the character equivalent of a fucking war crime. Kai Kisuke. Jack of all trades almost to a fault, but regardless is very good if you want to rely on fundamentals. He does good everything. A good neutral, good pressure, good Oki, good defense with his reversal, and good damage. He has some uniqueness though, like the fact that he's one of few characters with a true neutral projectile, as well as his stun status effect system. But for the sake of time, I can't go into that here. Play Kai if you want an easy playstyle with tools for every situation. Anji Mito. Rock, paper, scissors the character. That is to say, he has an extremely easy mix-up game, and he supplements that by being able to shrug off hits and say no you, thanks to the guard point and counter hit properties on certain attacks. Anji's neutral is a bit lacking, but he makes up for it by being obnoxious once he gets in, because he can make you scared to press buttons due to this. And he also has Fujin, which has follow-ups including a high, a low, or a reset that lets him go for a grab or I don't know, another fucking Fujin. He also has decent Oki with his infamous butterfly projectile. If you're just getting into the idea of mix-ups, don't mind a subpar neutral, and also want tools that turn the opponent's attacks back on them, play Mr. Mito. Axel Low. Axel saw his stat page, reset all of his points, maxed out on neutral, and then put 2s or 3s in everything else. Indeed, that's what this British disaster is. Has some basic mix-ups and neat quirks like an instant overhead and a reversal super, but his main game plan is to not let you get close enough that he needs to use them. He is easily the best neutral controller in the game. Look at these fucking buttons. These are normals! So yeah, he's a zoner, but he also has some swag combos. Though, the execution to do them is rough. If you're the kind of sicko who gets enjoyment out of winning neutral, not so that you can press a cool offense, but rather just so you can knock the opponent away, then hold up a sign in front of them that says, "Try again, fucko," then Axel is probably for you. Chip Zenith. Master of all trades, but this is a wish granted by the monkey's paw. Chip does most things extremely well. Neutral wins it with the best of ability in the game. Pressure, multiple frame trap points, and becomes stupid good with Romans. Mix-ups, high lows, and left rights with a command grab to boot. Good luck blocking this shit. Oki? Hell, I don't even know where I'm landing, so good luck blocking this once you get up. He even has a meterless reversal, which is a little bit handy because Chip has the lowest HP in the game by far, which is the monkey paw curse that he suffers to this day. Chip is a moldy wet piece of cardboard, but he has a Swiss Army knife taped to him and jet boosters, and if that sounds appealing, then congrats! Sasuke here is for you. Faust. I'll be honest here, I have no fucking clue what Faust wants to do, and to be fair, he probably doesn't know either. Faust is good at both neutral and also mixing up and pressuring the opponent with things like his command grab and teleports. But in order to safely get close enough to enact that pressure, he needs a way to bridge it from the neutral, and that is done with item throw. Now you might be thinking, holy shit, he just threw meteors! Man, it must suck to get knocked down then have Faust use item throw, and yeah, except sometimes he might just throw a donut and heal the opponent instead. Item throw throws a completely random item, ranging from the aforementioned meteor to hammers, weights that trip both the opponent and Faust, bombs that hurt both characters, and afros, just to name a few. So whenever Faust wins neutral and finds time to throw an item, he must then react to what he put out. Toss the meteor, going in pressure. Toss the fucking trumpet, time to scramble with your opponent as you both fight over it like children. Play Faust if you like having good neutral, good pressure, good schmixes, but want to play a slot machine when it comes to bridging those strengths all together. I don't know. Giovanna focuses entirely on being glued to your dick and beating the absolute fuck out of you. Giovanna in every way was designed to be an aggressive crack addict who presses buttons in your face. From a unique dash that carries momentum into attacks, to specials that leave her plus and let her reset her pressure if you block them, to an incredibly obnoxious overhead kickflip that can also left-right cross up, there's absolutely no denying who Giovanna was for. Gio is kind of like if Soul had a worse neutral game in terms of well, not having sword normals, but having even more cracked out pressure on the offense. I'd argue she's even scarier than this ape as long as she's played competently. Me personally, I can never block her mixes, and I'm afraid of her becoming plus because she throws these fucking moves out, so I've just regulated myself to mashing 6p whenever I get stuck in block stun. Please fucking help me! Play Giovanna if you want a hyper-aggressive rushdown character who smothers people with great offense. I'll also hate you. Gold Lewis Dickinson. Absolutely fucking awful neutral game, but has combos that hit harder than any other character in the game, and yes, I'm including this guy. Gold Lewis wants one of two things. Either opening you up with a frame trap or high-low mix, then converting that hit into eye-watering damage, or not caring anyways because look at his ship damage! Gold Lewis is a very polarizing character. He's slow as shit, his normals aren't too great for controlling space, though not the worst, and his Okazeme tool has what's effectively a cooldown on it thanks to this bar, but fuck! His offense isn't as rapid as Geo, but that's because he only needs to touch you once to make you bleed. I mean, Soul does similar damage with fewer flaws, but fuck off! Play Gold Dick if you want a slow, Oki-focused brute of a character. Eno. Aggressive rushdown character with a hyperfixation of putting out an absolute onslaught of highs and lows with some grabs to boot. Eno is terrifying, mainly because she has access to near instant overheads thanks to her dash putting her into the air immediately, granting instant access to air normals, which are overheads. So good luck reacting to this, fuckwit! She also has good Oki with her note projectile and isn't a slouch on low options either, with both of her stroke the big tree buttons, yes that's the name of this move, offering different advantages for her, such as the slow version being plus on block. And she can always fake her high-low options and instead land and then grab you with her command grab super if she so wants to, so that's fun as well. And while true, she doesn't convert super big damage off of her openings without meter, she is perfectly content to bop the opponent again and again and again and whittle their health and resolve into the fucking dirt. If you want some of the quickest high-low grab mix in the game with good Oki to boot and you don't mind a mediocre neutral game, Eno is definitely for you. Jack O. At the time of making this video, Jack O isn't out yet, but her beginner guide is. From what I can tell, Jack O seems to be a solid zoner with some scary Okazeme setups and decent neutral buttons. She reminds me quite a bit of Zato, which is the character we'll get into in a bit, but far easier to play and trades some mix-up potential in favor of having better buttons outside of these little summonable gremlins. It's hard to say for sure though, but I assume Jacko will be good for those who want someone with good zoning tools and some Okazeme set play schmixes. Leo Whitefang. Leo is very similar to Kai in many respects. That is to say, he's a jack of all trades. Good neutral, good defense options like a meterless reversal, guard point, a true neutral projectile, and good Oki. He's kind of like Kai's cooler and hotter brother, though he is slower mobility-wise. But unlike Kai, Leo actually has a much more significant mini-goal he strives for in matches, a sort of win condition. He wants to be able to knock you down and get into his back turn stance. Why? Because if he achieves this condition, then you get put into a fucking blender involving high-low and left-right mixes, command grabs, counters, plus unblock options, and just fuck! Similar to Eno, Leo doesn't kill you by opening you up once, then melting you with one combo like, say, Gold Louis. Instead, he opens you up for a small combo, then resets you right back into the fucking blender until you can escape. So if you want a good all-arounder with a cohesive goal, try Leo. Mei. Mei is kind of sorta like Soul in that she specializes in just having really good frame data and buttons that she can just throw out. She doesn't really have a cohesive goal like Leo, for example, and instead she wins by just succeeding in multiple small engagements, and she has the tools to do so. Personally, I don't really like Mei for this reason, but hey, not everyone is like me and wants a 10-step VHS program to victory. Mei specializes in fundamental schmixes, supplemented with her command grab, just like Soul, with a number of plus unblock moves to let her reset this scary pressure, just like Soul, and a good but not absolutely busted neutral, thanks to dolphins and their mobility, just like fucking Soul. I guess what I'm getting at is, play Mei if you want a less gameplay obnoxious Soul because she doesn't have his forward slash or far slash and lacks a meterless reversal, but a more aesthetically obnoxious Soul because getting hit by dolphins is annoying. I don't know, I don't play her. Milia Rage, the Okizeme Queen. Like, Milia is to Oki as Axel is to the neutral. Milia's kit is good at two things: winning the neutral with speed second only to Chip, then knocking you down and putting this fucking disc projectile over you that you have to block once you get up, and then mixing you to high hell and back. Seriously, once you're forced to block this, you have to deal with multiple lows, multiple overheads, one of which is near instant on the ground, 2 air dashes that let her fake a left-right mix, a grounded dash that can pass through you, an air dash that does the same thing, and a command attack dash. And once she opens you up, she combos you and resets the knockdown to do it all over again. If you like the idea of knocking your opponent down and exploiting that one Oki opportunity to never let them breathe again, Milia is for you. But she has the second lowest HP in the game, so have fun with that. Nagoriyuki, a slow character who jumps between 2 phases, an aggressive up-close mix-up character to a neutral dominant beast depending on his blood gauge resource. Blood gauge rises as he uses specials, and as it fills, he gains minor bonuses such as longer reaching sword attacks with faster startup, but if the gauge fills all the way, he loses, basically. Won't go into why due to time, but trust me when I say he loses. Whenever Naga's blood gauge is low, he's free to abuse a very solid strike throw mix-up game since he can cancel specials into specials, something no other character can do, allowing him to smother people in what feels like near infinite pressure strings. When blood gauge is high, he then backs off and reverts to a heavy neutral-based game, since his sword becomes longer and faster, and each hit of the sword reduces the blood gauge, allowing him to later reapply his scary offense. This occurs even if they block his sword too. Play Nago if you don't mind having arguably the worst mobility in the game, and in return, having someone with both some of the scariest pressure and some of the scariest neutral. Potemkin. Potemkin. Truly the glue eater of the roster. Pot is our residential grappler character and is simultaneously really easy to play and really fucking hard to play. He's easy in that his combos are stupid simple and deal ass loads of damage, but hard in that, like Nago, his movement is garbage. Pot's game plan revolves around getting through the hell that is neutral and then getting rewarded with a very effective mix-up game due to the threat of his grabs. Most characters' grabs are just nuisances. They're thrown out every now and then to keep you on your toes, but unless your soul aren't the best in terms of damage reward even if you Roman cancel the combo after. Potemkin, however, is different. Pot's command grab hurts just as much as if he were to hit you with a normal combo. So when Pot gets in on you, his mixes are much scarier since all of his options lead to big damage. And since people are scared of getting grabbed by him, they become vulnerable to his other options, like his infamous air grab super. Play Pot if you like big boys who struggle in neutral but are rewarded handsomely with a fantastic throw mix-up game, and if you like easy combos. Ramlethal Valentine. The only thing longer than her name are her fucking swords. Ramlethal specializes in the neutral and wants to win it to achieve one goal: the corner. Once she has the corner, she quite literally discards her good neutral by throwing her swords into said corner and then turning into an oppressive barefoot powerhouse. This works because when she throws a sword and it hits a corner, shortly after the sword explodes. Ram rushes in while the explosion is a threat that the opponent has to block, and while they're doing that, she can go in for a mix-up. It's a very simple game plan that is perfect for those new to the series, or if you just like waifus. Not much else to say. Oh wait, no, hang on, I forgot something. She also has a reversal super that I always get hit by. Play Ram if you like an easy to understand goal, great neutral, and simple execution. And finally, Zato 1. My personal main and arguably the most difficult character to play. Zato is a puppet character, meaning that you are responsible for controlling not just Zato, but his shadow minion, Eddie. On their own, they are very bad characters. Eddie dies in one hit, cannot jump, and has no schmixes to speak of. Zato's neutral is ass, he has 0 defense options, and he has basically 0 combo potential. But when they're put in the hands of a master, Zato and Eddie control as one unit, and as long as Eddie is available, all of these weaknesses are fixed, and Zato becomes one of the strongest characters in the game. With Oki and mix-ups that make Milia sweat, to having neutral tools that cover gigantic portions of the screen at once, to a shield that can defend Zato even as he's still able to freely attack. Zato and Eddie's pressure also goes on for fucking ever when optimized, with very few if any gaps. And even worse for the opponent, Zato's kit, similar to Milia's, is optimized for mix-ups. He can left-right cross-up, has numerous high and low options, and even has a command grab. But Zato is hard. His control scheme is completely different, requiring you to learn how to hold and release buttons since Eddie attacks by releasing them. And if Eddie dies, he then becomes the worst character in the game for a few seconds. Whoops. Play Zato if you want incredible Oki, incredible mix-ups, great neutral, and an obnoxious defense tool, as well as flashy combos. And don't mind having to relearn how to ride a bike and becoming piss poor if Eddie isn't available. The appeal of fighting games is pretty simple, in my opinion. It's a conversation between two ape brains trying to figure out what the other is going to do, how well each ape knows the characters, and the wackiness that ensues. There's a fantastic video on this appeal by YouTube channel The Cosmonaut Variety Hour, and if you've not seen it, I'd highly recommend it. There really is nothing quite like the genre, and whilst it takes a while to get into them, once you do click with it, you really get your time and money's worth, because these games have ridiculously long lifespans in most cases. And I don't think that Strive is the best Guilty Gear game, but I do think that Strive needed to happen, even though it has some pretty heavy restrictions compared to older titles. Because as I mentioned at the start, fighting games are already a niche genre because of the absurd amount of time it needs just to become competent, and everyone learns at different speeds. But while Strive is still difficult to get into, I'd argue that it's probably the go-to game right now to try to learn with if your interest has at all peaked. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go die in the Leo blender again. Get me out! I want out!